Hello everyone and welcome back to the SULS podcast. Firstly, I hope we're all doing well and I hope you enjoyed your first week of the academic year. I know some of you will have a mixture of online and face-to-face classes and others will be learning entirely online again. But regardless of what your timetable looks like, I hope your first week was kind to you and you're settling in okay on your new modules. I'm not sure if my voice sounds a bit different. It feels a little bit off. Let's just say that I certainly enjoyed my first week back. You can't quite beat a bit of singing in City Walls on a Wednesday evening. Anyway, on to more important things. This week's episode is a special one for me as I managed to catch up with a good friend of mine from across the Atlantic. Not only is he one of the best football players I've ever seen, he's also one of the hardest working and most dedicated students I've ever had the pleasure of studying with. His name is Aaron Chia, and a few months ago he graduated from the University of Stirling after completing the 2-year accelerated LLB course. And what makes this a particularly interesting episode is Aaron is from Canada and his studies, like everyone else's, were interrupted by COVID-19. So I wanted to get him on the podcast to discuss how he managed to complete such an intense course whilst living 3,500 miles away. Amongst other things, we discuss why he chose to study Scots law, what he thought of Stirling as a city, and whether he plans to stay in Canada or return to Scotland to pursue his legal career here. I think it's a fabulous episode with some wonderful insights that you will struggle to hear elsewhere. So without further ado, let's jump into it. I hope you enjoy.
Welcome to the Stirling University Law Society podcast, proudly sponsored by Ashurst Advance, creating client value through advanced thinking. Now, over to your host and Vice President, Jed France.
Aaron, welcome to the show. It's an absolute pleasure to have you on, and you're a guest I've wanted to get on for the past year, even when I was planning this prior to ever recording an episode. You were always someone I wanted to get on because of where you're from, the fact you're doing the accelerated LLB, not just doing the traditional 4-year LLB. I've always wanted to get you on the podcast, so it's a pleasure to finally bring it to fruition and have you on the show. Before we jump into the episode itself, I just want to begin by asking you, how's life over in Canada and how has your summer been?
Thanks for having me, Jed. I appreciate it, and it's obviously nice to be on the podcast. Summer here has been honestly pretty good so far. I can't really complain. It's been nice to be done school finally. So just been working really. Been lucky enough to get a job at a law firm here in Ontario in Canada. So I can't complain about that at all. It's been a really good experience. And then obviously knowing I don't have to go back to school right away in September is always nice. But it's been enjoyable so far for sure. How are you doing?
Yeah, no, I'm good as well, mate. Thank you for asking. It's not often the guest asks how I am as well. Normally it's just a spotlight on the guest, but yeah, no, I'm good as well. Thank you. And yeah, it's good that you've managed to get that job at the law firm. You've kind of hit the ground running since leaving Stirling, and I guess that's something that we'll come on to later in the episode. So to start us off, I thought we'd go back to the very start. We'd go back to before you'd even came to Stirling in the first place. So what was your academic background prior to coming to Stirling, and what did you study at college or university back home in Canada?
Yeah, so before I even applied to Stirling, I did a 4-year program here in Ontario at Trent University, which is in Peterborough, Ontario, Canada. So it was a 4-year business administration program. It was just general business, and then I specialized in marketing and consumer culture my 3rd and 4th year. And I think I graduated 2019, and it was in my 4th year, kind of when I decided I want to go to law school. There's obviously the option for me to go to law school in Ontario, which was a 3-year program there. But then I was also looking to going overseas, somewhere in the UK, and I noticed that there's a lot of UK programs, Scotland and England, where they offer 2-year accelerated law programs for people who have an undergrad. So that was something that really stood out for me, is getting a law degree in 2 years rather than 3, and then having that experience of living overseas, having the option to play football while I was in school. So yeah, that's what really stuck out for me. But my 4-year program at Trent was really good. It wasn't anything law specific, but it was, it gets you used to going to university, a lot of networking, obviously with a business program, and I got to meet a lot of good people there. So I was thankful that school really prepared me well for going to law school in the UK as well. So happy about that.
And what kind of made you make the switch to law? Because obviously, like you said, your background at university in Canada was in business and marketing and stuff like that, and it's quite different to law. So what made you kind of make the switch to law?
Yeah, that's a good question. Even when I was in the business program, like I wasn't really sure what I was going to do once I did graduate. But then I did need a couple, I guess, credits in any kind of area in my third and fourth year just to fill in space. And I decided to just take a couple of law classes. I have a friend that I played football with here that's a lawyer, and he's talking about his work all the time. And it kind of stood out to me. So I took a couple of law classes in my third and fourth year. And I really enjoyed those more than the business classes, actually. So it kind of led me to do a bit more research into what law school was like, what being a lawyer was like, because that's kind of the goal right now still, is to be a lawyer. So having that connection from football and then taking those extra classes in university kind of sparked my interest in law, which is why I decided to apply to Stirling.
Yeah, and you're probably one of the only Canadian people that we can speak to that call football, or you call it soccer, don't you? We're not used to hearing Canadian call it football. Is that for us, or do you actually call it football?
No, it's engraved in me now.
Yeah.
When I first moved to Scotland for school, I would call it soccer a couple of times, and all the guys would give me a hard time.
Oh yeah, for sure.
It's football for me now.
Yeah, you're not going to get away with calling it soccer for too long here in Scotland.
No,
it's definitely
no way.
something that gets stamped out straight away. So yeah, like you mentioned, you looked into it. You know there was a 2-year program here in the UK at different universities, and you mentioned the fact that you're big on football, and that was a big kind of selling point for you. So is that why you picked Scotland and you picked Stirling specifically? Because obviously Stirling is famous for having a really good sports side of things at the uni. Is that kind of what made your mind up for you?
Yeah, I mean, I was when I got the interest of going to school in the UK, it was always kind of Scotland was the place I wanted to go. And the main reason for that was I had been to Scotland before when I was younger for a football tournament, like with my youth club. But also my stepdad's also from Scotland, so I'd visited there before, and I really enjoyed my time when I was there. So as soon as I heard that there were schools in Scotland that had that accelerated LLB option for me, I knew it was going to be one of those schools. I think I applied. Actually, I did apply to one school in Wales, which was never really high on the priority list, but it was an option. Then I applied to Dundee, Glasgow, and Edinburgh Uni, I think, and I got into all of them in Scotland, anyways. And the kind of tilting point for me was the sports program at Stirling. And obviously, a lot of people are aware of how great the facilities are there, how great all the programs are, not just for football, for all the sports. You'll see in the news, there's lots of Olympic athletes there. So that was definitely a turning point for me when I contacted the coach from the uni, kind of spoke to him on and off for a couple months before even applying, just to show my interest. And then just from talking to him, it just seemed like a really good opportunity for me to go get a good law degree, as well as still have the option to play football at a high level. So Scotland was always high on the list. And as soon as I got accepted to Stirling, it was kind of an obvious decision for me to go there, and I'm really glad I did.
Yeah, and like you mentioned, the sports side of things at Stirling is probably its biggest selling point. I think at the Olympics during the summer there was I don't know if he's a current student or an ex-student, but he went to Stirling and he was a swimmer, and I think he became the most decorated UK athlete at the Olympics. I think he won like 7 gold medals or something like that, which is pretty crazy. I remember seeing it all over LinkedIn. And then, like you mentioned, playing football at a high level as well, because for anyone who doesn't know, the uni has loads of different football teams, but the first team, as they call it, actually plays in the Lowland League, which is the 5th tier of Scottish football, which is like a semi-professional level. So you don't tend to get that at a lot of unis, and I think that, like Aaron mentioned, it's quite a good selling point for people who, you know, they're obviously passionate about law or whatever. Like Aaron was passionate about law and wanted to study on the LLB, but if you have interests outside of that, which I feel like people are encouraging more and more these days when it comes to employability, then it's good to look at things like sport, and Stirling definitely stands out in that regard. So we're back there. You've applied. You've got into Stirling. You've came to Stirling for the first time. What were your first impressions of the city once you landed on that first day?
First I went to Stirling. I was there. I think I visited 2 months before school started, only because the football preseason had started. So I was there for 2 weeks. For preseason. But I still had quite a bit of time to explore the city and other places in Scotland as well. But first impressions were were amazing. Like the people there are extremely friendly, especially I think obviously me being Canadian, I think Canadians usually have a good relationship with people in the UK, specifically in Scotland. I know there actually is a high Scottish population, even where I live. It seems that way anyways, and we always seem to get along with each other. But the city itself is great. Like I've never been one to live in or wanting to live in a really big city, like kind of like a go big city. But
yeah,
Stirling's a little bit of the smaller one, I would say, but it still has everything that you would need and everything that a student would like. So I was blown away. And just being actually the first time I visited the university, I was surprised how kind of just visually appealing everything was. It's not your typical university with big buildings,
yeah,
and, you know, like streetcars and everything. It's a lot more of like a nature like campus. And the funny thing is actually the Trent University in Peterborough, where I did my undergrad, it's kind of the same thing. They're very environmental. It's actually built in more of like there's a lot more green space. So there's a lot of similarities between Trent and Stirling, I would say. And that kind of helped me to settle in when I did move there. And I did live on campus as well, as you know.
Yeah.
We spent some time together there. So I was really happy with everything. Really glad I made the choice to go to Stirling.
Yeah, I think that's another good selling point for the University of Stirling. It's the campus, because I applied to different unis like yourself in Glasgow and Edinburgh, and I know the bigger ones, they kind of have their buildings spread about the big city, like you mentioned, whereas Stirling, it's like one campus, everything's in the one area, and it's so green, there's so much grass and flowers and loads of nice stuff lying around. And I think as well, it's a smaller university compared to the other ones around the country, and you get, well, we've mentioned that a few times in the podcast, you get more of kind of like a community family feel almost, in terms of that one-to-one relationship you get with your fellow students or your lecturers. You know, when you go to the bigger ones in Glasgow and Edinburgh, sometimes you might feel like you're just another number in amongst a massive system. It's really not like that, in my personal experience anyway. At Stirling, you do tend to get more of a kind of personal feel and on different personal relationships with the people around the campus. And I think that's, if I was to try and sell Stirling to someone, I think it would be the campus itself, how beautifully stunning it is, but also the kind of smaller, tight-knit relationship that you get with the people around the campus. And I'm glad that you got to experience that as well. And I suppose it's good that you found similarities in Stirling that you had back home in Trent. I think that probably helped you have more of a positive experience, in terms of you didn't have to adapt to a completely different campus, a completely different way of working. So I'm glad it went that way for you. So you're in Stirling now, you're in our heads, we're in Stirling, and you're in your first semester on the accelerated degree. Now, Aaron's mentioned it before, for anyone who doesn't know, the accelerated degree, you know, it's kind of in the name. It's basically, you're cramming 4 years of the LLB, because that's how long we do it for in Scotland. I think in England it's 3 years as well. I think you mentioned as well, Aaron, it's 3 years. In Canada it's 4 years here in Scotland, because you get your fourth year, which is your honours year. And the accelerated, you do it for 2 years, so you're cramming, like, I think it's 3 more modules potentially into a year, compared to on the normal LLB you only have 3 modules. So that's a very demanding schedule. So how did you manage to juggle that, and how did you manage to manage the workload?
It was definitely busy.
Yeah.
I just to be clear though, I think it was 5 modules.
Right. Okay. 5, not 6.
So it was a 2-year program. The first semester you'd have 5 modules. A couple of them would carry over to your second semester, but you still have 5 modules in the second semester. You still get a break in the summer, so it's not a full-time course, like a full year course, I guess. You get the summer off, and then you're back to semester 3 and 4, both 5 modules again. So it is a demanding schedule, especially playing football as well. I played for the first team in my first semester and a bit of my second semester. And just having that training demand as well as the education demand was a lot for me to handle. I did get through it. I did struggle a little bit with school, only because it was just so much. But I ended up dropping down, playing a little bit less football my second semester, and that was really helpful for me. But yeah, the schedule itself was very demanding. You take, I guess, for example, like first semester, you take 3 modules with everyone else who's a first year. So it's good because obviously you're with other people who are new to the university, which was obviously where I met you, and a couple others. And then you have 2 classes that are just with, or actually 1 class that's just with the accelerated students, and then one class that I think was a second or third year course.
Mm-hmm.
So you're kind of meeting, the benefit is you're meeting all sorts of people. Like you're not just meeting first years, you're meeting more experienced students that can kind of help you along the way as well,
Yeah.
which is definitely a benefit. And then you're also meeting profs and lecturers and seminar leaders from other, I guess, higher classes, and that helps with networking as well. So, and kind of setting you up for that final year university.
Yeah.
But yeah, the schedule itself definitely very demanding. But I think after that first and second semester, once it switched over to third and fourth, obviously it was online, fully online. I guess we'll probably talk about that later. But
Yeah.
I did get used to it fairly quickly, and then having that connection with profs and others, students as well, helped me to get used to the changes.
Yeah, it's definitely a demanding schedule whenever, because obviously I meet different accelerated students. I'm in third year now, if anyone doesn't know, and I meet different accelerated students along the way, because obviously they're cramming more modules into their first and second year compared to us, so you kind of meet different ones along the way, and every time I see them I just feel like giving them a hug and being like, I'm so sorry, because it's such a demanding schedule, and it's definitely not something that I would like to do myself. But again, you know, if you've already got an undergraduate degree and you can do your LLB across 2 years as opposed to 4, I suppose it makes sense to just kind of suffer a little bit, or a big bit perhaps, for 2 years as opposed to dragging it out for an extra 2 years on top of that. So I think people will probably be interested to know, Aaron, how did you find the accent in Scotland? Was it hard to adjust to?
Yes, I'm not sure how much, I guess, you guys in Scotland recognize it, but me, I do have I have some family members that obviously do have a Scottish accent.
Yeah.
So I understand them, but it's just being in Scotland, speaking with people who only have ever had a Scottish accent, and there's obviously different regions, I assume, as well. People have different kinds of Scottish accents, but yeah, it did take a little bit to get used to everything. Even when I'm talking to you every once in a while, I've got to ask you to repeat yourself. And then actually, the most difficult one for me, I think, was playing football with guys with stronger accents, because obviously they're a little bit more intense, and in the heat of the moment, their accent can really stand out. So you really got to listen or get used to it quick, or else you'll be lost. And even with lecturers too, like certain profs, I remember there were specific profs that had stronger accents where I really had to, listen back on lectures online just to figure out what they were saying. But I did get used to it after a little bit.
Yeah, put the lectures in 0.5 times speed and try and make out what they're saying.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So yeah, I suppose you hinted at it when you were speaking a few minutes ago, Aaron, about how midway through, I think it was kind of halfway through the second semester. I remember it was kind of towards the tail end of we were doing our criminal essays, and I remember when we were kind of getting ready to hand them in, or we were getting ready for our marks back, or one of the two, but we were speaking to Sarah Carrick, who was one of our criminal, I think she took our seminars at the time, and I remember that the uni was half empty and we weren't too sure what was going on with COVID, and everyone was just kind of like in limbo, not sure what was going on. So it was kind of halfway through towards exam time. So COVID has hit. How hectic was that for you? And did you end up staying in Stirling, or did you move back to Canada?
I ended up moving back to Canada just before exams of that second semester. I think COVID I guess the school really was affected by COVID a couple of weeks before. I would say, from what I remember, I think it was like 3 or 4 weeks before exam period. I think there may be only like 1 or 2 weeks left of teaching. And obviously I was living in halls at, I honestly can't even remember which one it was, but
I think it was Fraser you were living in. Right?
It was Fraser, yeah, that's right. And I just remember it being really quiet for like a week or two. And no one really was sure what was going on. And actually, I remember a couple of nights, me and you and a couple other people were out in the student center. It was just dead for the longest time. And yeah, we were just finishing up our criminal essays. But yeah, that was obviously really odd for everybody. I assume the staff at the school as well were kind of in shock by everything. But I had a flight booked to go home right after my last exam. And then as soon as I heard that everything was switching to online, exams were going to be online, I was like, well, if I wait till that time, I might not get let back into Canada, because I know they were kind of canceling flights, or they were not letting certain people back into countries because of how bad everything was with COVID. So I booked like a last minute, I think it was, they announced that everything was switching online, and then within the next 2 days, I booked a flight for like 4 days later to go home. So I was packing up all my stuff, Luckily enough, I have a friend that lives in Glasgow that I was able to keep all of my clothes and all my belongings and stuff with. So he actually still has all that stuff now. So I do have to go back at some point to get it all. But yeah, it was a real rush for a couple of days, and then I didn't have a lot of room to bring everything back home to Canada, so I was struggling. I had to get all my books and everything back home so I could still study for my exams. So yeah, it was a real mess, but at the end of the day, we got through it.
Yeah. I remember because you mentioned like you switched once it kind of got announced that it was all going to be online, because I remember, I think I remember correctly, your plan, like you mentioned, was to stay for exams, and then we just kind of got used, because I remember seeing you like every day, because like you said, it was so quiet and we just kind of spent a lot of time together because there was really no one there. And then I remember, I think I came home from work one day or something like that, maybe woke up one morning and you said, I've changed my flight, I'm flying back in literally a few days. And I was like, no, no, don't go. And I remember we came round, it was literally like thinking we're just going to come round like any other normal day and just like chill out. And it turned out to be the goodbye, and your half your stuff was packed, and that friend that you mentioned was coming to pick you up to take you to Glasgow before your flight. And it just switched, and that's just kind of epitomizes the way the world was at that point. Everyone was trying to like react as best as they could, but we're all just so shocked at how things were changing and moving, and no one really knew what was going on. But I think ultimately you would agree you made the right call in doing that, because like you mentioned, that they could have closed the borders at any point, you might not have got back in. So in hindsight, would you say you made the right call there?
Yeah, definitely. It was, I mean, obviously those few days were extremely hectic, just trying to book flights, get everything sorted with all my belongings and everything. But yeah, at the end of the day, it was best to just come home, because no one really knew what was going to happen at that point, whether I was going to be able to come back, whether even like the next year of school was going to be online or not. Things were kind of changing every day. So yeah, at the end of the day, definitely made the right call coming home. The whole online exam situation, I was very appreciative of, because obviously there was no way I was going to come back to Scotland just to write my exams. Yeah, and I think the school was very, like, they were obviously very understanding about everyone's situation. The whole 24-hour exam thing was it was nice for students anyways. I found those exams to be less stressful. I was able to prepare better, not having to really memorize as much stuff, but actually understand stuff. So I think it actually prepared me better in the long run. So I was really happy with that, and yeah, definitely made the right decision to come home.
Yeah, and it was just a hectic time, and it was just kind of like a split-second decision. It was like a judgment call, in the heat of the moment. And I definitely agree. I definitely think you made the right call, and it's just a shame, because at that time we thought, okay, it's really bad right now. Go back to Canada. We'll do the exams online, and then we'll have the summer. COVID will clear up, it'll go away, and you'll come back in September, August time, and we'll be back for our second year together. Obviously, that didn't go to plan, and as things stand, still not seen Aaron since that time. So the last time I seen him in the flesh was that like random goodbye that I wasn't expecting. So yeah, like you mentioned, your stuff's still here in Glasgow, so at some point you're going to have to come back across and get it, and I'm sure we'll link up when you come over. So you mentioned the fact you did your exams online, and you've done it from across the Atlantic, literally 3,500 miles away in Canada. I did Google that, by the way, so that is the correct figure. Roughly, about 3,500 miles, roughly. It's a different time zone, obviously. I think you must be like 4 or 5 hours behind, so were you having to get up at the crack of dawn to do these exams? Obviously, it's 24 hours, but that's set on the kind of UK time of 9 a.m. to 9 a.m. So were you having to get up at like 4 in the morning to do them, or did you just like sacrifice a few hours and get up later?
Yeah, so you mentioned, the exams were 24 hours. I guess your time would have been 9 to 9, so it was 4 to 4. But for me, you know what, I wasn't getting up at 4 a.m. to start my exam. That just literally made no sense to me. So I kind of just, obviously for everybody, the night before an exam, you're kind of like obviously anxious. So for me, I usually don't sleep well before exam days, and I knew the exam questions would always come out at 4 a.m., even though I knew I wasn't going to get up and start the exam, but I did wake up at 4 or 5 a.m. just to see what the questions were. I would look at them, kind of settle myself down and go back to sleep, to be honest, and then kind of wake up around 9 and start it. And I think all the exams I wrote, I just tried to do them within the one day. So whether it was 9 to, obviously some were longer than others, I usually was like 9 to 3-ish. Not try to overdo it, but I would never wake up the next day and try to, get something done. I was trying to get it done within the first day. And I think given that with the law exams, it's usually, I think pretty much all of them that I wrote, it was usually just 3 long answer questions that were around 1,000 words each, which is obviously pretty lengthy, but 24 hours is loads of time. My exams were spread out pretty well. It gave me lots of time between exams to prep for the next one. So, but yeah, the time change didn't mess me up too bad.
Yeah, I remember, like you said, when you were getting up at 4 a.m. to check the questions, I remember you would message me at 4 a.m. your time, so I was just sitting down with my coffee and my breakfast ready to start the exam at 9 a.m. UK time, and I'd get a message from Chia on Facebook saying, yeah, those questions are all right, I'm going back to sleep and I'll wake up in a few hours and I'll do them. Yeah. So yeah, I like, because they always say, it is 24 hours, but they obviously don't advise that you sit there for 24 hours and do it. It's really just to kind of cater for any like work commitments or care commitments or taking your children to school or anything like that. Obviously, they wouldn't advise you to do 4 a.m. to 4 a.m. in Canada, because like I say, it is 24 hours, but you should really, I think the longest I spent overall doing the exam was like 9 until 9 maybe, which is 12 hours, but that was like, I would try and split it up, so like do a question in the morning, then have lunch, do another question in the afternoon, have dinner, then do another question in the evening. That's the way I kind of found the best way to do it, because like you said, normally it would be 3 questions, roughly 1,000 words, so I found it best to kind of split it up like that. I would never, stay up till like 1, 2, 3 in the morning trying to do it, because I just think, if you're kind of getting to that point, then you're just kind of flapping over unnecessary stuff, maybe just overthinking things a little bit, and going into too much detail that you actually need to be doing. So you did the entirety of your second and final year, I suppose, online, like you mentioned. So how did you find doing a full year academically online again from 3,500 miles away?
I personally enjoyed it pretty much as any other year. I didn't mind the online schooling too much. I would say I'm fairly independent with my learning anyways. The only thing I obviously did miss out on is having that one-on-one conversation with profs and other students in seminars. That would be the biggest loss.
Yeah.
Because obviously the participation when it comes to online seminars is really tough. And, professors, they obviously do their best to make sure or push students to participate and share their opinions. But it's obviously, you can't have everybody able to follow that, and not everyone's going to share their opinion willingly on a virtual call. I understand it's tough.
Yeah.
But and with the time change, that was also pretty difficult for me. I think the latest, well, obviously I tried to sign up for the later seminar times, and I ended up getting up at least 7 in the morning. I think the earliest one I had was probably 4 a.m. And then I'd just go to bed after that. But, the times, I got used to it after a little bit. It was nice. There were still quite a few options for seminars, so I was able to schedule on different days rather than just getting up at 4 a.m. and staying up till noon or something like that. Like, that was kind of ridiculous. But I think the uni did a good job of offering quite a few options for international students, given the time changes that we had to deal with.
Yeah, and I think you had a really, because I remember we'd have like video calls and stuff to talk about university and even just catch up on a personal level. It seemed like you had a really good support network there as well, because you had your sister who was studying, you had your girlfriend who was studying, so the 3 of you kind of had that study sessions together, I suppose, and it really helped motivate you to study, because the people around you were also working really, really hard. And I remember being on calls with you guys, and the 3 of you are there with your laptops, just like with the headphones on, absolutely like ingrained in what you're doing. And I've never, honestly, even to this day now, like over a year later, I've still never really seen people like work that hard together as a group. And I think it was really inspiring and motivating for me as well, because I could see you guys doing that. And obviously for you, Aaron, you were studying a degree which was on the other side of the Atlantic Ocean, and you weren't even in Stirling doing it. So I thought, I'm actually here in Stirling, I've got to become away a little bit and actually get stuck in here. So I think that probably did help you a lot. Would you say that helped, definitely having 2 support figures there who were also studying really hard for their exams?
Yeah, definitely. Like, I remember in the mornings, I'd be down at the kitchen table with my sister. My girlfriend was there as well. She's doing a nursing program. My sister's doing a kinesiology program. So fairly intense programs as well. And we would all have different calls throughout the day. So we kind of go off on our own to do our calls, and then we're back at the tables to do more work. So it was nice to have that support from one another and kind of motivate each other to get stuff done throughout the week. The only issue with the online stuff that I found, like, I don't mind the online studying and reading, and that's not a big deal for me, but it's just managing your time, obviously, because everything's on you. And, back when we were in person, like, I would usually take weekends to kind of relax or spend time with friends. But when you're at home, you kind of feel like, you always have school in the back of your mind, right? And then on weekends, sometimes you find yourself doing work on weekends. And if you've been doing school from Monday to Friday, then you haven't really given yourself that break. So you kind of have to keep track of your own, you gotta make sure you do take days off, because that's what weekends should be for. But with online school, it kind of forces you to do work on weekends as well, unfortunately.
Yeah, because there's no separation, right? It's something we've mentioned before in the podcast. There's no separation when it comes to workspace and chill space, because like you said, you'd go down in the morning to the kitchen and they'd be sitting doing uni work. Normally, that probably wouldn't be the case. The kitchen would just be somewhere to like eat and chill out and like just have conversations, but then it becomes a workspace. And like you say, on weekends, because there's no separation from chill space and workspace, you feel guilty for not doing uni work. So at any time that you had a spare half an hour or an hour or whatever it may be, you thought, I really could be doing more of that essay, or I really could be studying for this exam. And like you said, it really kind of puts the onus on you to put the work in and then also give credit to yourself and take that time off. Because like you said, normally you'd be in uni Monday to Friday, you've been for a few days, whatever it may be, and at the weekend you might do some studying, but you wouldn't have any set classes, so it's easier to separate. So I think that was definitely a challenge for me anyway with the whole online learning. And obviously it's not all back in person just now in Stirling. We do have like in-person seminars and stuff, which makes a big difference, because I suppose, going back to the point about having that support network there for you, Aaron, that probably helped a lot with the social side, because obviously that's something that we missed with online learning. You could, if you were just in that house by yourself without your sister and your girlfriend studying and kind of having that kind of team spirit when it comes to exams, you might have felt more isolated and more lonely, and maybe even tougher for you to get motivated. I think that's something that, there's probably a real benefit for you to have that, because without that, it can be quite lonely in your room just studying all the time. And I definitely think that was something for me that I missed, just going into a seminar, even, when you're like tired and you can't really be bothered, just seeing your friends and chatting to people, it really kind of motivates you to work hard. And I definitely think that's a kind of drawback to online learning. So so that kind of brings us to the end of your Stirling journey. So we've obviously done quite a good job of doing it from start to finish. So now you can sit and you can reflect on your experience, Aaron, now that you've graduated, you've moved on, like say you've got a job in a law firm right now. So how would you reflect on your time at Stirling as a whole, both in person and your second year online? How would you look back on it?
No, I'm grateful for everything that happened in my experience at Stirling. No, like I was happy. Obviously, I got my first year mostly in person. I got to experience Stirling itself as well as the university, other areas in Scotland. I was able to travel to England a couple times. So as far as the experience of living overseas and experiencing another way of living was definitely I'm grateful for. It could have been much worse. COVID could have hit a little bit earlier, and then I would never have been able to experience any of that. So trying to be positive about it. And then second year being online, I think the school, the profs, everyone on the staff was like really, I found they were very flexible with everything. They tried to be as positive as possible. Most profs that I had were obviously passionate about teaching and did their best to motivate students to participate and do their work. So really, I can't complain at all. And then as far as like the legal program itself, I think it prepared me quite well. One class that I would definitely look back on and say I'm really glad I took it was the work placement. They were able to accommodate actually a placement for me to do online here in Canada. So I actually sourced my own placement here in Ontario, and then that was part of my work placement program at the university, so I got a credit for that. So having that was extremely beneficial for me, getting some real hands-on experience, kind of building from the learning of the past year and a half, and that was definitely something I'm grateful for.
Yeah, and I mean, you absolutely smashed it. You maybe a bit modest and not say it yourself, Aaron, so I'll say it for you. Aaron absolutely smashed such a tough degree, like we mentioned before, the intensity of it, how much you have to cram into a few months of a semester. I've said that in the intro, Aaron, obviously you've not heard it yet, but Aaron is definitely the most hardworking student I've ever met in my whole life.
I appreciate that.
Having friends like that when you're studying the same degree, albeit at a kind of slower pace over the 4 years, it only works wonders for you. And I know that I'm a better student for knowing Aaron and having the pleasure of working alongside him and having little study sessions and stuff and sharing a pepperoni pizza from Scran. Definitely some fun memories of that. So we've discussed Aaron Chia, the student. So what's next for you now, Aaron? What's the plans? Obviously, you've got a Scots law degree, so are you going to be coming back over here to practice in Scotland, or are you looking to stay in Canada? Kind of what's your future plans looking like right now?
So I mean, even when I decided to come and apply to Scotland, my goal in the end was kind of just get my degree, and then I would, obviously enjoy that experience, but still come back to Canada and hopefully pursue a law career here. And that is the plan still right now. I've been lucky enough to start working at a criminal law firm here in Ontario as a student associate. So I'm working that right now, really enjoying it. I really love the area of criminal law right now. And I can definitely see myself continuing with that going forward. I think I'm also considering looking into family law as well. But as far as the criminal law right now, I really enjoy what I'm doing and hoping to stick with that for a while.
Well, listen, Aaron, you keep it up. You're absolutely smashing it. I've said it before. You're a very hardworking, a very motivated person, and it's an absolute privilege to call you a friend, not just a colleague in terms of university life. So keep it up. We wish you all the best in the future.
Thanks, Jared. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to the Stirling University Law Society podcast. Be sure to check out our website and social media pages through the links below.